Have you ever felt that sting? That knot in your stomach when someone criticizes you, whether it's a boss, a friend, or even a stranger online? It can feel like a punch to the gut, making you doubt yourself and maybe even want to hide away. What if I told you there's a way to handle that feeling, not by ignoring it completely, but by transforming it? Imagine facing criticism with confidence, perhaps even using it to become stronger. That's exactly what we're diving into today, exploring life-changing advice on how winners handle criticism, guided by the timeless wisdom of the legendary Dale Carnegie, a man who dedicated his life to helping people navigate the complexities of human interaction and build resilience from within. In this video, we're going to uncover powerful principles that will help you understand why criticism affects us so deeply, how to tell the difference between helpful feedback and just noise, and most importantly, practical strategies to keep moving forward, staying true to your path no matter what anyone says. Stick with me until the very end, because the final piece of advice is absolutely crucial and could be the most impactful takeaway. Ready to change how you react to negativity and step into your power. Let's get started. And while you're here, if you find this advice helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more insights like this. Let us begin by understanding a core aspect of human nature, a desire so deep-seated that it influences much of our behavior and our interactions, the profound need to feel important, to feel valued, to feel significant. Dale Carnegie spoke extensively about this innate human craving in his works. He observed that the desire for a feeling of importance is one of the chief distinguishing differences between humankind and the animals. We are not content merely to exist. We long to be acknowledged, appreciated, and to know that our lives, our efforts, and our very being have meaning in the eyes of others. This desire manifests in countless ways, from seeking praise for our achievements, to yearning for recognition in our relationships, to striving for status in society. It is a powerful motivator, driving us to achieve great things, to contribute to the world and to connect with others. However, this very same desire makes us vulnerable. Because we crave approval and importance, we become acutely sensitive to anything that seems to diminish our standing, threaten our self-esteem, or question our worth. And perhaps the most direct assault on our feeling of importance is criticism. When someone criticizes us, they are in a sense challenging our competence, our judgment, or even our value. This feels like a direct contradiction to our fundamental need to feel important, triggering defensiveness, hurt, and fear. Understanding this connection is the first step in mastering how to handle criticism effectively. It helps us recognize that our initial, often emotional reaction is rooted in this very human desire for recognition and importance. When we understand this, we can begin to separate the critique itself from the perceived threat to our sense of self-worth. We can start to see that a comment about our work, our ideas, or our actions is not necessarily a complete dismissal of our entire being. This awareness allows us to approach criticism with a little more detachment, a little less emotional intensity, and a greater capacity to process it constructively. The fear of losing face, the fear of being judged inadequate, stems directly from this deep-seated need. It is this fear that makes criticism such a potent and often debilitating force in people's lives. But by acknowledging this desire and its implications, we gain a measure of control. We can work towards building an inner sense of importance and value that is less reliant on external validation, making us more resilient when that validation is withheld or when criticism is leveled against us. This is not to say that the desire for recognition is negative. It is a powerful engine for progress and connection. The challenge, as Carnegie's wisdom suggests, is to manage this desire in a way that empowers us rather than makes us fragile in the face of disapproval. It is about finding a balance, recognizing the value of feedback while not allowing negative input to cripple our motivation or dictate our self-worth. Let's face a simple, undeniable truth. Criticism is a universal experience. Absolutely no one goes through life without being criticized. It is as inherent to taking action and interacting with the world as breathing is to living. No matter how pure your intentions, how diligent your efforts, or how exceptional your character, someone, somewhere, will find fault with you, your work, or your ideas. This isn't pessimism, it's simply a realistic observation of human dynamics. Think about it. The moment you decide to do anything that is visible to others, whether it's starting a new project, expressing an opinion, pursuing a passion, or simply living your life according to your own values, you open yourself up to evaluation and judgment. People have different perspectives, different experiences, different values, and different agendas. What one person praises, another may condemn. What one person understands, another may misunderstand completely. And sometimes, criticism stems not from a genuine evaluation of your actions, but from the critic's own insecurities, biases, or even envy. Consider the most admired figures throughout history. Were they universally loved and praised? Absolutely not. Abraham Lincoln, a president revered today for navigating the United States through its most challenging period, was relentlessly criticized during his time in office. He was called incompetent, mocked for his appearance, and attacked politically with viciousness that is hard to imagine even in today's contentious environment. Yet, he persevered. Mahatma Gandhi, a global icon of non-violent resistance, faced immense opposition and condemnation, not only from the British but also from within his own country. Martin Luther King Jr., a leader of the American civil rights movement, was met with hostility and intense criticism from many quarters. The pattern is clear. The more you achieve, the more you stand out. The more you challenge the status quo, the more likely you are to attract criticism. Mediocrity often goes unnoticed, and thus uncriticized. But stepping into the arena, daring to create, to lead, to innovate, or even just to be authentically yourself, makes you a target. Expecting to live a life free from criticism is an unrealistic fantasy. It is like expecting to walk through a rainstorm and not get wet. It simply won't happen. And expecting yourself to be so perfect that no one could possibly find fault is an even grander delusion. Perfection is an abstract ideal, not a human reality. We all have flaws, make mistakes, and have areas where we can improve. Even if you somehow achieved a state of near perfection, someone would likely criticize you for being too perfect, for not being relatable, or for making them feel inadequate by comparison. Understanding the universal nature of criticism is incredibly liberating. It frees us from the exhausting and ultimately futile attempt to please everyone. It allows us to stop taking every critical comment as a personal affront or a sign that something is fundamentally wrong with us. Instead, we can begin to see criticism as a natural, almost inevitable part of the process of living, working, and interacting in the world. It is part of the landscape. When we accept this reality, we can shift our focus from trying to avoid criticism to learning how to handle it effectively when it arises. This acceptance is a powerful step towards building resilience and maintaining our emotional equilibrium in the face of external negativity. It is the foundation upon which we can build a more constructive response to critical feedback, distinguishing between what might be useful for our growth and what is merely noise to be disregarded. Here is one of the most profound and counterintuitive insights about criticism, one that can truly transform your perspective. Unjust criticism is very often a disguised compliment. Think about that for a moment. When someone unfairly attacks you, your work, or your achievements, it frequently means that you are accomplishing something significant, something that is noteworthy enough to attract negative attention. As we just discussed, people who are doing nothing, who are blending into the background, who are not making waves, are rarely criticized. It is the person who is taking initiative, who is making progress, who is having an impact, who becomes visible enough to be targeted. Consider the psychology of the critic, particularly the one who offers unjust or overly harsh criticism. Often, their critique stems not from a genuine desire to help you improve, but from their own internal state. Envy, jealousy, insecurity, or a sense of their own inadequacy can fuel their desire to tear down those who are succeeding or simply trying. When you are making progress, pursuing your goals with passion, and beginning to achieve results, you inadvertently highlight their own lack of progress or their unfulfilled ambitions. This can be uncomfortable for them, and one way they might react is by attempting to diminish your achievements through criticism. Their attack isn't really about you or your work. It's a reflection of their own feelings and frustrations. When you receive unjust criticism, especially if it is particularly harsh or illogical, step back and consider what it might actually signify. Could it be that your efforts are getting noticed? Could it be that you are moving in the right direction? A direction that perhaps others are afraid to take or resent you for taking? Could it be that your success is making someone else feel uncomfortable with their own lack of success? If the criticism is unfair, unfounded, or disproportionate to the situation, it is highly likely that it is not a reflection of your failure, but rather an indirect acknowledgement of your impact or progress. Think of an artist whose work sparks controversy and is heavily criticized by some while being celebrated by others. The very fact that the work elicits such strong reactions, even negative ones, indicates that it is powerful, original, and significant. Mediocre art is ignored. Similarly, a business leader who implements bold changes might face fierce opposition and criticism from those resistant to change, but their willingness to act is what defines them as a leader. An innovator, introducing a disruptive technology, will inevitably face criticism from those invested in the old ways. So when faced with unfair criticism, instead of letting it wound you or derail you, try to see it through this lens. Stand tall, perhaps even smile inwardly, because it might just mean you're on the right track. It might be a sign that you are making a difference, that you are visible, that you are not operating in the safe, unnoticed realm of mediocrity. This perspective doesn't make the criticism enjoyable, but it can certainly make it less damaging, and even, in a strange way, affirming. It shifts the focus from what's wrong with me to what am I doing that's important enough to be noticed, even negatively. This reframing is incredibly powerful in maintaining motivation and confidence in the face of hostility. It allows you to view the critic's words not as a definitive judgment of your worth, but as potential evidence of your impact. While it is true that much criticism can be unfair or born of negative motives, it is also important to acknowledge that not all critical feedback falls into that category. Sometimes, criticism, even if initially painful to hear, can be incredibly valuable. The challenge lies in learning to distinguish between criticism that is meant to help you grow and criticism that is merely an expression of negativity or a thinly veiled attack. Constructive criticism, when offered sincerely and thoughtfully, provides specific feedback aimed at helping you improve. It focuses on your actions, your work, or your ideas, rather than attacking your character or inherent worth. It is often delivered with a supportive intent, even if the delivery isn't perfect. It points out areas for improvement, suggests alternative approaches, or highlights potential flaws in a plan or execution. Think of a mentor reviewing your work and pointing out specific areas where it could be strengthened, providing concrete examples and actionable suggestions. Or a colleague offering feedback on a presentation, suggesting ways to clarify certain points or engage the audience more effectively. This type of criticism, though it might still sting a little initially because it points out imperfections, is a gift. It gives you valuable information that you might not have been able to see yourself, helping you learn, develop, and improve. Unjust criticism, on the other hand, is often vague, overly general, and focused on tearing down rather than building up. It might involve personal attacks, name-calling, or broad, unsubstantiated condemnations. Its intent is usually not to help you, but to hurt you, discourage you, or diminish your standing. It often lacks specific examples and focuses on flaws in your personality or character, rather than on observable actions or work. For example, saying, "This report is poorly written," is a critique, though perhaps not very specific. Saying, "You're an incompetent idiot who can't write a decent report," is an unjust and personal attack. Learning to discern the difference requires a degree of emotional detachment. When you receive criticism, take a moment before reacting. Breathe. Listen carefully to what is being said. Is it specific? Does it offer examples? Does it seem focused on your actions or your character? Is the person offering it someone whose opinion you respect? And do they seem to have your best interests at heart, even if they are being direct? If the criticism is specific and seems potentially valid, consider it carefully. There might be truth in it, even if it's uncomfortable to admit. Ask clarifying questions if possible. Seek additional perspectives if necessary. Use the feedback as an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. If the criticism is vague, overly harsh, personal, or seems driven by negative emotions or a lack of understanding, it is likely unjust. In such cases, the most productive response is often to disregard it, or to address the underlying misunderstanding, if possible, without getting drawn into an emotional argument. Developing this discernment is a skill that improves with practice. It requires setting aside your immediate defensiveness and approaching feedback with a degree of objectivity. By actively looking for the potential value in criticism, while simultaneously protecting yourself from the damage of unjust attacks, you can transform critical encounters from painful experiences into opportunities for learning and resilience. This balanced approach, recognizing that not all criticism is created equal, is essential for navigating the complex landscape of human interaction and feedback. One of the most important lessons in handling criticism, particularly the unjust kind, is the realization of how utterly unproductive and draining it is to retaliate against every petty attack. When someone unfairly criticizes you, especially in a public or semi-public forum, the natural human inclination is often to strike back, to defend yourself vigorously, to point out the flaws in the critic's own arguments or character. This urge is understandable. It stems from that same desire to feel important and to correct what feels like an injustice. However, acting on this impulse is almost always a mistake. Engaging in a tit-for-tat battle of words, especially with someone who is determined to be negative or is arguing in bad faith, is a waste of precious energy, time, and emotional resources. It rarely changes the critic's mind, and it often lowers you to their level. Think back to the example of Abraham Lincoln. Early in his career, a sharp letter he wrote mocking a political opponent nearly resulted in a duel. That dangerous experience taught him a vital lesson: never stoop to the level of worrying about or engaging with petty attacks. Imagine if, instead of focusing on leading the nation through the Civil War, Lincoln had spent his days writing angry rebuttals to every newspaper, editorial that called him a baboon or weakling. His energy would have been entirely consumed by defending his pride, and the nation would have suffered immeasurably. His greatness lay, in part, in his ability to absorb the blows, to focus on the monumental task at hand, and to let his actions speak louder than his critics' words. When you retaliate against petty criticism, you give it power. You elevate the critic's words by demonstrating that they have affected you. You engage in a battle on terrain chosen by your opponent, a terrain often characterized by negativity, personal attacks, and distorted logic. This kind of engagement is a no-win situation. Even if you manage to win the argument in the eyes of some onlookers, you have still expended valuable energy that could have been directed towards your goals. Moreover, engaging with negativity can drag you down emotionally, cloud your judgment, and distract you from what truly matters. A more effective approach, one advocated by wise thinkers throughout history, is to rise above the fray. Focus your energy not on defending yourself against every slight, but on continuing to do your best work. Let your results, your achievements, and your character be your response. As the saying goes, living well is the best revenge. When you are focused on building, creating, and contributing, the petty criticisms of others lose their power over you. They become like annoying gnats that you can choose to ignore. This doesn't mean you should never address false accusations or significant misunderstandings, but it requires discernment. Choose your battles wisely. Most petty criticisms are not worth your time or emotional investment. By refusing to engage in retaliation, you maintain your dignity, conserve your energy, and stay focused on your objectives. You deny the critic the satisfaction of having provoked you and successfully distracted you. This is a form of quiet strength, a demonstration of resilience and self-possession. It allows you to continue moving forward, leaving the noise and negativity behind, while your work and your accomplishments stand as the true answer to your detractors. It is a difficult discipline to master, but it is essential for anyone who wishes to achieve significant things without being consumed by the negativity of others. A critical aspect of handling criticism effectively, particularly the unjust kind, is the conscious decision to shift your focus away from the critics and their words, and firmly onto your work, your goals, and your contribution. Worrying excessively about what others think of you, and especially about negative opinions, is a tremendous drain on your mental and emotional resources. It is like trying to drive a car with the brakes on. You expend a lot of energy, but make little progress. When you are overly concerned with criticism, your mind becomes preoccupied with defending yourself, replaying negative comments, and anticipating future attacks. This internal turmoil distracts you from the task at hand. It saps your creativity, diminishes your motivation, and can even lead to paralysis, making you afraid to take risks or try new things for fear of attracting more criticism. Imagine trying to write a book, paint a picture, build a business, or develop a new skill while constantly agonizing over potential negative reviews or comments. The sheer weight of that worry would make the creative process incredibly difficult, if not impossible. Dale Carnegie understood the power of focused action as an antidote to worry and fear. He suggested that staying busy, actively engaged in meaningful work, leaves little room in the mind for anxiety and negative thoughts. This principle applies directly to handling criticism. When you are deeply engrossed in your work, when you are focused on the task of creating, solving problems, or serving others, the noise of external criticism fades into the background. Your energy is directed outwards towards your goals rather than inwards towards self-doubt and defensiveness. Make your work your primary focus, your passion, your reward. Find satisfaction and fulfillment in the process of doing, building, and contributing, independent of the applause or criticism you might receive. When the intrinsic motivation derived from the work itself is strong, external opinions, both positive and negative, have less power over your emotional state and your drive. Consider the story of Carnegie himself when he began teaching public speaking. Many people scoffed, questioning what a farm boy knew about teaching such a skill. Had he allowed himself to be consumed by their skepticism and criticism, he might have given up before he even started. But he didn't. He focused on his work, developing his methods, teaching his students, and helping them overcome their fears and improve their communication skills. He kept working, kept refining, kept helping. And eventually his dedication and the positive results he achieved for his students spoke for themselves. The critics faded away, and some even became his admirers. His success was a direct result of his unwavering focus on his work, not on the opinions of his detractors. By making a conscious decision to prioritize your work and your purpose over worrying about criticism, you reclaim your mental energy and maintain your momentum. You build a kind of inner fortress where your self-worth and your motivation are, rooted in your efforts and your contributions rather than in the fluctuating opinions of others. This doesn't mean becoming oblivious to feedback, but it means developing the strength to filter it, to disregard the noise, and to stay dedicated to your path, allowing the quality and impact of your work to be the most powerful response to any criticism you may face. Worry is a corrosive force, and much of our worry stems from what others think or say about us, especially when it comes in the form of criticism. Dale Carnegie offered practical techniques for combating worry, and one particularly effective method for dealing with the anxiety triggered by criticism is what we might call the 30-year test. It's a simple yet profound question you can ask yourself whenever a criticism or negative comment causes you distress. Will this matter in 30 times? Years? Think about the things that cause you worry or pain today, particularly in the realm of criticism. Someone made a harsh comment about your appearance. A colleague dismissed your idea in a meeting. A stranger left a negative remark online about something you created. These things can feel significant in the moment, triggering a cascade of negative emotions, hurt, anger, self-doubt, shame. We replay the criticism in our minds, imagining worst-case scenarios and letting the negativity consume us. Now fast forward in your imagination 30 years. You're looking back on your life. How significant will that particular criticism seem from that vantage point? Will it have fundamentally altered the course of your life? Will it still cause you the same degree of pain or anxiety? In the vast majority of cases, the answer is a resounding no. Most of the criticisms we receive on a daily or weekly basis, the ones that cause us immediate distress, are simply not that important in the grand scheme of a lifetime. They are temporary ripples on the surface of our experience, not deep currents that will define our journey. Applying the 30-year test is a powerful way to gain perspective. It helps you differentiate between minor irritations and truly significant challenges. It allows you to put criticism in its proper place, often the place of triviality. When you realize that a particular comment or critique is highly unlikely to have any lasting impact on your life in 3 decades, it becomes much easier to let it go now. You recognize that wasting your present energy and peace of mind on something that will be irrelevant in the future is illogical and unproductive. Carnegie encouraged focusing on the present moment and tackling challenges as they arise, but he also understood the value of putting things into perspective. The 30-year test is a tool for doing just that. It pulls you out of the immediate emotional response and forces you to evaluate the criticism through a long-term lens. If the answer to the question, "Will this matter in 30 years?" is yes, perhaps, because the criticism points to a fundamental flaw you need to address for your long-term well-being or success, then it warrants your attention and potentially action. But if the answer is no, if the criticism is clearly fleeting and insignificant in the grand narrative of your life, then you can consciously decide not to let it steal your joy or peace of mind. You can refuse to give it power over your present moment. This practice requires discipline. Your initial emotional reaction might still be one of hurt or anger, but by consistently applying this test, you train your mind to resist dwelling on trivial criticisms. You build resilience by consciously choosing which inputs you will allow to affect you deeply. Life is indeed too short to be lived in constant anxiety over fleeting opinions that will be forgotten by the passage of time. By using the 30-year test, you reclaim your present moment from the tyranny of insignificant past criticisms and build a stronger, more resilient emotional future. Here is another fundamental truth that, once fully accepted, can alleviate a tremendous amount of stress related to criticism. You simply cannot please everyone. It is an impossible goal, a futile pursuit. No matter who you are, what you do, or how hard you try, there will always be people who disagree with you, dislike you, or find fault with you. Trying to live your life in a way that garners universal approval is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. It's an exercise in frustration. Think about the sheer diversity of human opinions, preferences, and values. We all have different backgrounds, different experiences, different beliefs about how things should be. What appeals to one person is unattractive to another. What one person considers right, another may see as wrong. Given this inherent diversity, it is mathematically impossible for any single individual, action, or creation to receive unanimous, positive feedback. Even the most universally admired figures have their detractors. The most celebrated works of art have their critics. The most effective policies have their opponents. Attempting to please everyone is not only impossible, but it is also self-defeating. When you try to cater to every single opinion and preference, you lose your own voice, your own direction, and your own authenticity. You become like a chameleon, constantly changing your colors to match your surroundings, but ultimately having no true color of your own. This can lead to a fragmented sense of self, a lack of clear purpose, and a feeling of being pulled in countless directions, unable to satisfy any of them fully. Dale Carnegie understood that seeking universal approval is a recipe for worry and unhappiness. He advocated for living according to your own principles and pursuing goals that are meaningful to you, rather than constantly adjusting your course based on the shifting winds of public opinion. He recognized that true confidence and peace of mind come not from external validation, but from living in alignment with your own values and contributing in ways that you believe are important. When you accept that you cannot please everyone, you liberate yourself from the crushing weight of that expectation. You no longer feel compelled to defend yourself against every single piece of negative feedback or to change your course of action, based solely on disapproval. You can instead focus on doing what you believe is right, pursuing the goals that are meaningful to you, and serving the people whose opinions you genuinely value, those who offer constructive criticism and support. This acceptance doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of all feedback. It means developing the discernment to know whose opinions matter and why, and whose opinions are simply part of the background noise of human interaction. It means understanding that disagreement and disapproval are normal, natural parts of life, and that they do not diminish your worth or the validity of your pursuits. By letting go of the need for universal approval, you gain the freedom to be authentic, to take risks, and to pursue your path with greater conviction and less anxiety. You accept that for every person who criticizes you, there will likely be others who support and appreciate you. Focusing on those who appreciate you and on the value of your own efforts is infinitely more productive than agonizing over those you cannot and will not ever please. One of the most powerful ways to build resilience against the pain of criticism and to find a deeper sense of purpose is to shift your focus from seeking external validation to offering genuine contribution and value to others. Dale Carnegie emphasized the importance of taking a sincere interest in other people and finding ways to enrich their lives. This outward focus is not only key to building positive relationships, but also a potent antidote to the self-absorption that can make us overly sensitive to criticism. When your primary focus is on what you can give, whether it's your time, your skills, your knowledge, your kindness, or your effort, your attention is directed away from yourself and onto the needs and well-being of others. This outward orientation naturally diminishes the intensity of your focus on how others perceive you. While the desire for recognition is fundamental, channeling that desire into contributing to others is a far more fulfilling and less vulnerable path than constantly seeking approval for its own sake. Think about the sense of satisfaction that comes from helping someone, from solving a problem for a client, from teaching a skill to a student, or from creating something that brings joy or utility to others. This satisfaction is intrinsic. It comes from the act of giving and contributing itself. It is a more stable and reliable source of fulfillment than the fleeting applause or approval of others, which can be withdrawn as quickly as it is given. When you are genuinely focused on contributing value, you are less likely to be paralyzed by the fear of criticism. Your motivation comes from a deeper place, a desire to make a difference, to solve a problem, to create something meaningful. This purpose-driven approach makes you more resilient to negative feedback because your actions are grounded in something more substantial than the hope of a positive reaction. If your goal is to help someone learn and someone criticizes your teaching method, you are more likely to evaluate the criticism for its potential to help you teach better, rather than taking it as a personal attack on your worth as an educator. Your focus remains on the goal of helping others, which transcends the personal sting of the critique. Moreover, when you consistently contribute value to others, you naturally build goodwill and respect. People are drawn to those who are generous, with their time, their energy, and their talents. This respect is earned through action and contribution, not through seeking popularity. As you become known for your willingness to help and your commitment to making a difference, the opinions of casual critics tend to matter less, both to you and to those who have benefited from your contributions. The positive impact you have on the world becomes a powerful counterpoint to any negativity directed towards you. Dale Carnegie's principles are deeply rooted in the idea that success and happiness often come from focusing on others. By shifting your perspective from "what can I get?" or "what do people think of me?" to "what can I give and how can I contribute?" you not only build stronger relationships and create more positive outcomes in the world, but you also cultivate an inner strength and resilience that makes you far less vulnerable to the damaging effects of criticism. Your sense of worth becomes tied to your purpose and your actions, a foundation far more stable than the ever-shifting ground of public opinion. Let's revisit and expand upon a crucial point: the absolute impossibility of pleasing everyone. This isn't just a casual observation, it's a fundamental truth about human diversity and individual perspectives that bears deep consideration. Trying to tailor your actions, your words, and even your identity to gain the approval of every single person you encounter is not only an exhausting endeavor, but it's also fundamentally flawed and ultimately destructive to your sense of self and your ability to live authentically. Every person on this planet is a unique individual, shaped by a distinct combination of genetics, upbringing, culture, experiences, beliefs, and values. We have different preferences in everything from food and music to politics and personal conduct. What one person finds charming, another might find annoying. What one person considers innovative, another might view as reckless. Given this incredible tapestry of human individuality, it is simply not possible for any single behavior, opinion, or creation to resonate positively with every single member of the human race. There will always be someone who sees things differently, who disagrees, or who simply doesn't like what you are doing. Consider the vast array of products, services, and ideas in the world. Even the most popular and successful ones have their critics and their detractors. A movie that wins awards and is loved by millions will still have people who hate it. A widely praised restaurant will still receive negative reviews. A political leader who wins an election will still face fierce opposition. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply a reflection of the diversity of human opinion. When you internalize the understanding that you cannot please everyone, you release yourself from an immense burden. You no longer feel personally responsible for every negative reaction you receive. You understand that some level of criticism or disapproval is a natural byproduct of engaging with the world and putting yourself out there. This realization allows you to stop contorting yourself into different shapes in an attempt to fit everyone's expectations. You can stop agonizing over individual negative comments as if they represent a universal truth about you. Trying to please everyone often leads to inconsistency and a lack of authenticity. If you try to be what one person wants, you might alienate another person who wants something different. You might find yourself compromising your values or suppressing your true self in an attempt to gain acceptance from a wide range of people with conflicting desires. This can be incredibly damaging to your self-esteem and your sense of integrity. Dale Carnegie's teachings implicitly advocate for authenticity and living in alignment with your own values, rather than constantly seeking external validation. By accepting that you cannot please everyone, you are free to focus on living in a way that is true to yourself, and that serves the people whose opinions you genuinely respect and whose well-being you care about. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to others, but it means being discerning about whose opinions you allow to influence you. You prioritize the feedback of those who offer constructive criticism, those who understand your goals, and those whose judgment you trust. The opinions of those who are consistently negative, who misunderstand your intentions, or whose values are fundamentally incompatible with yours, can be respectfully acknowledged, but do not need to dictate your actions or your emotional state. Embracing the impossibility of universal approval is an act of self-preservation and empowerment. It allows you to define success and worth on your own terms, based on your efforts, your contributions, and your adherence to your own principles, rather than on the elusive and ever-changing barometer of public opinion. It frees you to pursue your unique path with courage and conviction, understanding that disagreement and criticism are simply part of the landscape, not insurmountable obstacles. Beyond understanding the nature of criticism and its source, developing robust inner resilience is key to navigating its impact. This resilience isn't an innate trait that some have and others lack. It is something that can be cultivated through conscious effort and the application of practical strategies. Dale Carnegie offered numerous techniques for developing mental fortitude and overcoming worry, many of which are directly applicable to building resilience against criticism. One of the most powerful antidotes to the anxiety generated by criticism is purposeful action. When you are actively engaged in work that is meaningful to you, your mind is focused outwards on the task at hand, rather than inwards on self-doubt and negative rumination. Inactivity and idleness can create fertile ground for worry and allow critical comments to fester in your mind. By staying busy, by immersing yourself in your projects, hobbies, or responsibilities, you occupy your mental space with productive thoughts and actions, leaving less room for anxiety about what others might be saying or thinking. Carnegie often stressed the importance of throwing yourself into your work as a way to combat worry, and this principle applies perfectly to neutralizing the debilitating effects of criticism. Another simple yet remarkably effective technique is the conscious act of smiling. Even if you don't feel like smiling, the physical act of doing so can actually influence your internal state. Smiling sends signals to your brain that can trigger the release of endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects. It can help to break the cycle of negative emotions that criticism can initiate. Moreover, smiling can influence how others perceive and react to you, potentially inviting more positive interactions and responses from the world around you. It is a small act of defiance against the negativity that criticism can bring, a way of asserting your inner state despite external attempts to bring you down. Furthermore, a key aspect of building resilience drawn from Carnegie's methods for handling worry involves calmly analyzing the situation and preparing for potential outcomes. When you receive criticism that causes you concern, ask yourself, what is the worst that could possibly happen as a result of this criticism? Often the reality of the worst-case scenario is far less terrifying than the vague anxieties swirling in your mind. Once you have identified the potential worst outcome, calmly prepare to accept it if necessary. This doesn't mean giving up or assuming the worst will happen, but rather confronting the possibility head-on. By mentally preparing for the most challenging outcome, you reduce the fear of the unknown and often realize that even the worst-case scenario is something you can likely cope with. This process diminishes the power of the criticism by stripping away the extra layers of fear and uncertainty that your mind might have added. Building inner resilience is an ongoing process. It involves developing self-awareness about your reactions to criticism, practicing techniques to manage your emotional responses, and consciously choosing to focus your energy on constructive activities. It requires cultivating a strong sense of self-worth that is based on your values and your contributions, rather than on external validation. By consistently applying strategies like staying busy, using physical actions like smiling to influence your mood, and calmly facing your fears by preparing for potential outcomes, you build a robust inner core that can withstand the inevitable storms of criticism and allow you to continue pursuing your goals with courage and determination. My friends, handling criticism is not about developing a thick skin or becoming indifferent to the world. It is about developing wisdom, perspective, and resilience, drawing from the profound insights into human nature that thinkers like Dale Carnegie have offered. We have explored how our fundamental desire for importance makes us vulnerable to criticism, and how understanding this vulnerability is the first step towards managing it. We have accepted the universal truth that criticism is inevitable for anyone who dares to act and stand out. We have learned to see unjust criticism not as a definitive judgment, but potentially as a backhanded compliment, a sign that we are making waves. We have understood the folly of wasting precious energy on retaliating against petty attacks, choosing instead to focus on our work and let our results speak for themselves. We have embraced the power of putting criticism into perspective, using the 30-year test, and accepted the liberating truth that we simply cannot please everyone. Most importantly, we have discovered the immense strength and resilience that comes from shifting our focus from seeking external validation to genuinely contributing value to others and the world. By implementing practical strategies for navigating critical situations and cultivating inner fortitude through action and mindset, we equip ourselves to face criticism, not with dread, but with a quiet confidence. Remember, your journey and your worth are not defined by the opinions of your critics. They are defined by your purpose, your efforts, your values, and the positive impact you strive to make. Embrace the wisdom to handle criticism wisely, and you will unlock greater peace of mind and the freedom to pursue your most meaningful goals with unwavering determination.